Is it on now? Yeah, it's on now. Okay. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Anyway, that commercial is a rememberer because they ran it for so long. Anyway, we'll start out with chapter 13 this morning. Going to set the stage for chapter 13.
What verse?
Probably most of it. We'll actually get into the first parable a little bit. This is the parable of the sower. And Ray preached from that once here and talked about it. I'm not going to go through it again. We'll just remind ourselves what it is, and then we'll move on. There's more parables after this. And I thought I would go through the parables after this one. Okay, I'll set the stage for you. In chapter 12, his mother and brothers come to see him. And you remember what happened when his mother and brothers come to see him? He denied them. He wouldn't let them, he was in the house, and the houses were teeny tiny anyway, and they couldn't get in, and he says, no, who are my mothers, who are my brothers? And he's pointed at them. So this happened, and in the same day, Jesus went out of the house, start of 13, and sat by the lake. There's such a crowd arose around him. This was the instance he got in the boat and was setting offshore just a little bit, and he had a crowd by the water's edge, and he spoke. And he tells the parable of the sower. And we went through that. It's about where the seed lands, and it all represents something. And there's one passage in there, 19. When anyone hears the message about the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in their heart. This is the seed sown along the path. But he does mention the kingdom there. That's part of the theme of the rest of it. It's in the first one, just not as pointed as it is in the rest. We'll move on down to parallel. Me and New Bible. There we go. The parable of the weeds. Another sowing story. Similar to the first, but it's about good seed being sown. Jesus told them another parable. And you'll notice these four words are kind of a theme you're going to see of each of these parables. The kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while everyone was asleep, his enemy came and sowed weeds amongst the wheat and went away. When the wheat sprouted and formed heads, then the weeds also appeared. The owner's servants came to him and said, Sir, didn't you sow good seed in your field? Where then did the weeds come from? An enemy did this, he replied. Okay. An enemy did this, he replied. The servant asked him, do you want us to go and pull them up? No, he answered. Because while you are pulling the weeds, you may uproot the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. At that time I will tell the harvesters, first collect the weeds and tie them in bundles to be burned. Then gather the wheat and bring it into my barn. Well, we've got another run of what tells you what this is, but you can probably guess by the first parable Ray did that the farmer's God, possibly. The wheat would be the followers. The bad seeds would be all sorts of things that are bad people, maybe more. And then he just drops out and starts telling the parable of the mustard seed. And you all know that, but he told them another parable. What do we go first? The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed. Seem to have heard those first 4 words already. Mustard seed, which a man took and planted in his field. Through it is the smallest of all seeds, yet when it grows, it is the largest of garden plants and becomes a tree so that birds come and perch in its branches. And then he tells them another one. So, if the kingdom of God is like a mustard seed, and it's really small to begin with, it started with one man, Jesus Christ. That's small compared to all the people in the world. And it's grown. Look how it grew after the church was dispersed, and I think that was, I'm not supposed to say I think, am I? Anyway, my wife told me not to use my opinion, but the church was scattered, and it grew. And it grew even farther when it got into the other worlds. Well, you realize that babies were kind of not thought of as precious. They wanted male children. Females they didn't make them any money. They didn't take care of their crops or anything. There's one garbage area. There was a well there, and I forget how many babies were in that well when they dug it up. Just full of babies. Now, what was the difference about the Christians were they went and got those babies that were in the junkyard and brought them back and raised them. During the plagues, people were set out on the curb when they found to have plagues. They don't want plague in my house, so they just take their kids, whatever it is, they threw it out there. The Christians went around and picked them up, took them home, and nursed them back to life. This was a growing of the church. But it was still prosecuted at the time, to a certain extent. You look at the Bible. Wonderful thing, they come along with the printing press. Before that, they had it chained to the pulpits so nobody could touch it. But when the printing press came out, the biggest contraband coming out of England to the mainland was Bibles. They were rowed across in many. I think if I remember right, the story of that is the German was the last one to be translated and get into the country because they had you were in dire straits if you got caught with a Bible. When we look at today, we have I've got extra Bibles and I've got all sorts of things. We're not prosecuted for that. That was one thing this country stood on to begin with. And this country was a God of the country to begin with. Anybody could come here and worship. That was part of the beginning of this country. And then we went through a down period. We come back again. And we need to come back again. So the church grew. That's what we're talking about, the mustard seed. This one man started the whole thing. I may not be as good on the rest of them. I'm working on it. Okay, the next one. He told them still another parable. Oh, this is the kingdom of heaven is like yeast that a woman took and mixed into about 60 pounds of flour until it worked all through the dough. Now I know yeast, Jesus took and said to his own disciples, be very careful of the yeast of the Sadducees, Pharisees, the teachers. But this yeast is about growth. You put yeast in something, you've ate unleavened bread, it's like flat. You've ate bread that has yeast in it, it's nice, fluffy, way bigger. This is about the growth of it, about the growth of the kingdom of heaven. You just put a small amount of yeast in, a big amount of flour, you don't put 10 cups of yeast in when you make, bread or something like that. You're putting a very small amount of yeast in. Back to the small part. And Jesus spoke all these things, in 34, spoke all these things to the crowd in parables. He did not say anything to them without using parables. And that was because so was fulfilled what was spoken through the prophet. I will open my mouth in parables. I will utter things hidden since the creation of the world. What did I say? The creation of the world. What's important about that? These were they things they knew? Did the Jews know any of this? Absolutely not. Creation of the world. So his parables are quite interesting because they are something we didn't know. They are something new that they didn't know. Jesus brought new knowledge. We don't realize that, but he didn't just bring the gift of the Holy Spirit, baptism, chance to live forever. He brought knowledge from the old times that's been known forever, which we kind of skim over that reading the parables. Don't you? Has anybody noticed that before? And I want some people to talk, but you can be quiet if you want. I'll run out the things to say, I can tell you that. Anyway, usually I have too much, so I skim down a little bit. And then we jump back to parable of the weeds. Explained. So where did I get my explanation? Yeah, right from him. And a lot of times we miss the explanations for things. It's like in that last chapter in the Bible, if we listen close, they explain a lot in there. It's like the 666 is the name of the beast. And then they explain, this is the name of the beast, 666. So all we have to do is look at it in the way of numbers, and we see they did a deal back then when numbers equated to letters. So we'll take our alphabet. A would have been 1, B would have been 2. So they equated numbers with their alphabet. It was easier to teach their kids. Plus, if you want to put Penny plus Sam up on the board on a heart on there, you didn't have to use Penny plus Sam. You would take the equation of the numbers. You might take all the numbers and add them up and make them one number. You might put the individual numbers. You could kind of hide it. By making it a complete number, you kind of hid it. But if you look up beast equates to 666. It equates to that number. I don't remember I think it's in 2 languages it does that, if I remember right. Didn't look all that up. That's kind of off my head. And off my head can be kind of squirmy. You know how you kind of lose things over time? Yeah, I do that sometimes. But I remember the thought of it. Okay. Parable of the weeds explained. Then he left the crowd and went into the house. His disciples came to him and said, "Explain to us the parable of the weeds in the field." He answered, "The one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man." I was wrong in the first one. The first one, it was God. The second one, it's man. Of course, I've already read this. I know what I'm thinking. Anyway, this is the Son of Man that sowed this. The field is the world, and the good seed stands for the people of the kingdom. Oh, you thought it'd be the message, didn't you? The good seed is us. He sowed us here. The weeds are the people of the evil one. We know who that is. He's going to tell us here in a minute. And the enemy who sows them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age. And the harvesters are the angels. Okay, what's the end of the age? I know who the angels are. I know who the devil is. Well, I don't really know who he is because I've not met him that I know of. So, what's the end of the age? How many ages have we had? We had the age before the flood, and now we're in the age after the flood. Some will tell you different ages, some will tell you up to. Anyway, we're in an age in the Bible. And when it comes to the end of that age, we're going to see that last book play out in the end. So this is talking about the end of the world there, as we know it. Of course, if you were Noah and you got in that boat and got out of that boat, would that be the end of the world as you knew it? Because that's a new world. Now, there's 2 ways to have new in Greek and in the other. There can be new, and they both pronounce new. There's like something brand new, something you've never had before. A baby in your arms, a brand new car, everything. And you'll understand the next one. The next one is it's been renewed, made like new. Like I took a car and just shined the crap out of it and made it brand spanking new, as close as I could to. New. Both are used as new in the Bible. Now, when Noah got out of the ark, he fell on it. He come to a new earth. What did that new mean? That new mean renewed earth. And then he comes back to a new earth in the last book, and that is a renewed earth. So we have to look at things kind of differently, like, are we going to come back to a new earth just like Noah? In fact, Noah is one of the things Jesus talks about later on in the Bible as reference to the end times. He said it'll be like in the days of Noah. You probably have all heard that. So in the days of Noah, all the good people got in the ark. The ark went up on top of the water. The bad people died. And then he came back down to a new earth. Well, wait a minute, that almost kind of mirrors some of the things in the last chapter. So here we go. And there's a lot to be known about the end of times, reading what Jesus had to say. And then once you're done doing that, you need to read the Old Testament before you read that last book, because it'll help you a lot. Okay, I'll move on. Let's see, into the age. Okay, we're at 40. As the weeds are pulled up and burned in the fire, so it will be at the end of the age. So that will talk of judgment and the end of that. So this weed thing is a lot more about the end of times than it is about, but it's about what happens at the, we'll continue on. The Son of Man will send out his angels, and they will weed out of his kingdom everything that causes sin and all who do evil. He didn't just say he was going to get rid of the people, did he? He said he'd get rid of anything that causes sin. That's a new thought, isn't it? So all the sinful things are going to go away. Will my phone go away? I don't know, maybe. A lot might go away. We might actually use things for what they're supposed to be used for. So that's an interesting spot in there that we all probably read over. We're thinking he's going to take all the bad people and the devil and all those things away. But we didn't think of all the things that cause. Isn't that something? Okay. They will throw them into the blazing furnace, where there will be weeping and grinding of teeth. And we've heard that saying several times. We know when we hear that, we're talking a bad place. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Whoever has ears, let them hear. And he mentions that the righteous will shine like the sun. They'll have their heavenly bodies. We're not going to enter into that kingdom with these bodies. Actually, in these bodies, the option of not dying is not there. Is there anybody 1,000 years old? Is there anybody 500 years old? We got a 200-year-old person? No. So the option of dying is not an option. We're all going to die here eventually. It matters what we do while we're here. We need to learn God's ways and get prepared for that. Well, we seem to have another parable after this. The parable of the hidden treasure and the pearls. What does it start with? The kingdom of heaven. We're getting a theme, ain't we? This is all themed down through here about the kingdom of heaven. And we're going to read more of them. I'll stop in the center and talk about themes and the Jews and how they write their stuff. You got to remember, there's a Jew writing this. This is Matthew. I don't want to replace that. I want to say they take and write. They will tell you one thing. They want to get something across to you, like the kingdom of heaven. And, well, who's Jesus? He's a Jew. He's the one speaking it. He's telling you once, telling you twice, telling you 3 times. In fact, I see the word kingdom 6 times here. He tells you 6 times. It must be danged important, because when the Pharisees bothered him, he told them, I want to say 3 times. Gave them three parables. This must be much more important than that. They tell you that many times. You're going to look at books in here that have, this stories are very easy. You can tell the difference in them. The last book, not as easy. You really got to look, but there's more than one story in there. You've heard people say, oh, there's 7, and then they do it again, and then they repeat it again. They do. That might be another, it might be more than one book there if you'll look at it. More than one story of the same story. Because that book's very hard to understand and go through. That book starts when Jesus went back to heaven. If you read chapter 5, you realize that. Okay. Did I read these? I don't think I read them. Okay. We're hunt for treasure and the pearls. The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field. When a man found it, he hid it again. And then in his joy went and sold all he had and bought the field. Now, is that confusing? It kind of is. Kind of says like I could buy my way into heaven. No, that's not what he's really saying. He's trying to give you an idea of how precious the kingdom of heaven is, of how precious of Jesus Christ coming and all the things of the heaven, how precious that is. He's not saying you can go buy it. You just should put it in your heart and hold on to it, hide it in your heart, keep it with you. And we do another one, just real similar, and we go again. The kingdom of heaven is like a merchant looking for fine pearls. When he finds one of great value, he went away and sold everything that he had and bought it. It's valuable. And people that got a hold of those Bibles back in the years after they have to smuggle them out of England, that was precious to them. That Bible, the Word, was precious to them. To know and understand Jesus and his what's going on. They didn't understand it before. The priest would tell them, well, you're going to have to pay me so many dollars to get forgiven. You need to put so many dollars in that box over there, and then you'll be forgiven. And that isn't the way it is. So it was precious to them. I remember the first Bible I actually bought myself. I still have it at home. I couldn't quit looking at it. I had bought a Bible, I had bought the Word of God, and it was amazing. So it's about the value of it, is what he's trying to get across to you. And then we move on. The parable of the net. Oh my gosh. Once again, the kingdom of heaven is like the theme continues on. A net that was let down into the water and caught all kinds of fish. Oh, I hate these lights above me. They're glaring off this tablet. Let me try this. Yeah, that's much better. When it was full, the fishermen pulled it up on the shore. Then there they sat down and collected the good fish in a basket, but threw the bad away. This is how it will be at the end of the age. The angels will come and separate the wicked from the righteous and throw them into the blazing furnace, where they will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. We hear that term again, and we see another talk of the end of the age. So this parable, the net, talks about the end. It's important, because we are coming to the end. I can't say that. Phil will tell you he has a shelf of books that he said he used to have a shelf book. I don't remember. But anyway, he had this pile of books, and they all give you a number and a date and everything, just when it's going to happen. And all them books, he said, is passed by. He says all them dates are done. We're not going to know it. We could read and study forever, and I don't think we'd know the day. Because God's not going to give us the day. He didn't tell Jesus the day. So all the people that worry about that, let's not worry. Okay. Have you understood all these things? Jesus asked, and they said yes. They replied. He said to them, therefore, every teacher of the law who has become a disciple in the kingdom of heaven is like the owner of a house who brings out of his storeroom new treasure as well as old. You know, I read that, and what's it remind me of? New Testament, Old Testament. This is the new treasure, and there's an old treasure. We don't have a Bible that you can buy a Bible of just the New Testament, but our Bibles all have the Old Testament. We need the Old Testament to understand the New Testament. How am I doing? Oh, just got about the right amount. New Testament, Old Testament. Do you need the Old Testament to understand the New Testament? In some things, it's really good to know the Old Testament and the New Testament. You understand the word I am, what I am means. In the New Testament, they harped on him for saying I am. If you hadn't read the Old Testament and you knew that I am is what the burning bush called itself, you wouldn't know why they were harping, because they felt the burning bush was God. Some think it's Jesus. I didn't say I said I thought he was Jesus. See, I stayed away from that. She told me, don't tell him what you think. Anyway, I'll give you, here, there's a, we'll look up, I'll give you a story out of the Old Testament. So if you ever want to understand the New Testament, you need to read the Old Testament. Let's see, that's in Ezekiel. Ezek-I-L. And if you go to chapter 30, Ezekiel, It's something to see in the Old Testament, not a bad thing to read. Let me get it found here. There it is. And we're 30. Okay, chapter 30, the title of it in my NIV is Lamented Over Egypt. The summary of the story is God wasn't happy with Pharaoh. The Pharaoh had said that he created the Nile. God said, I created the Nile. And he didn't like other things that was going on, so he was going to cause grief on them. He was going to take them out of where they are. In other words, they were the power in the area. If you wanted help, you asked them. They sold their chariots to Egypt, God's followers. That's where they got their horses and their chariots from. Back then, a chariot was like a tank. No kidding. That's what they were. They rode on them with spears and rode through and stabbed. They were the tank of the day. But God didn't like what they were doing, what he was saying. So he was going to put a laminate on them. Well, what's a laminate? Well, it's like, kind of like not a curse, but he doesn't like them. He's telling all about what he's going to do to them. He takes them out. And this is straightforward. He's talking about the Nile and everything in this. But then if we jump over to 31. The Pharaoh as a fallen cedar in Lebanon is the title of it in my NIV Bible. It pretty well covers it. He tells the story again, the prophet does, as in a tree that's fallen in Lebanon, depicting the Pharaoh and Egypt. And he tells all about how, all the people, all things got underneath their tree. They got nourishment from the tree and everything, and it's going to fall. So we jump over to 32. A laminate over the Pharaoh. Oh, same story. But it's about it says you're like a monster in the sea. In other words, some kind of big fish. We'll call it that. And he's going to let down his net and he's going to lay you on dry ground. He moves him up on dry ground about him dying and everything picking at him. Well, he's talking about Egypt. There's 3 stories. If they didn't tell you in the beginning what they was, you wouldn't know what they were, would you? In the beginning, they give you an idea of what it's about. But there's 3 stories there. So if I took the beginning out of 2 of those stories, you wouldn't know what they were and just put those 2 stories in there. This is a Jewish thing. They write one story. They write another story. They write another story. Sometimes they will talk in a circle. They will go start here with the beginning of the story, come around, tell the middle of the story, and then they might the finishing of the story. Then they'll start back with the beginning of the story, go again with the end of the story. They just go around in a circle. That's circuits. They've got a special name for it. I can't think of it at the moment. And you'll find this in the New Testament. You'll have to look for it. Guarantee you're going to find it in the last chapter, because that's why it seems like the earth dies I don't know how many times. Well, let's have a prayer before everybody shows up here. Like to pray? Anybody got anything they want added to the prayer? No? Okay, you're all a talkative bunch. Anyway, dear Lord our God, we thank you for the morning you've given us. Thank you for everybody here. We praise you for your word. We praise you for us walking again and coming here today. We thank you, Lord, for all you do for us. Watch over everybody as they go out this week. This is our family. You give them to us. We thank you, my Lord. In Jesus I pray. Amen. Thank you, everybody. Okey dokey.